is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright soldiers, so in this video we're going to be talking about the neutral cards and the crossover starter exclusive cards that are going to be coming out for the new crossover set that arrives tomorrow. Because personally I'm very excited to see what these cards are going to look like and how they're going to feel when, piloting these decks. But some of the decks really do need the crossover starter decks to really get the engine going, because they are some key pieces in those starter decks. Alright, but getting into business, so we have new keywords or new terminologies. I'm not exactly sure what to put them here. I just said that these are triggers. And triggers are going to be the new things that's going to be happening for Cardfight Vanguard. And like I said earlier, that I don't think they explained everything that they did. If you are a Vanguard player and you already know what these triggers are, of course they're going to be different for Shadowverse Evolved. So I went ahead and made a good example of all of these triggers, and they're color-coded too to what the cards are going to look like. Of course, they're going to have the translations under the bottom of the cards, but let's go ahead and figure what these triggers are. Alright, so starting off first, only trigger cards with the same class as your leader can be put into your deck, and there are 4 types of triggers. So we have the critical trigger, the draw trigger, the stand trigger, and the heal trigger. So the critical trigger gives your follower on your field +2 attack. The draw trigger lets you draw a card, and then the stand trigger refreshes a follower on your field, but this turn that follower can't attack enemy leaders if it already did. And then heal trigger gives your leader +3 defense. So a very interesting, kind of fusion here. So now we have our own little translation here for triggers from Vanguard into Shadowverse Evolved. Alright, and then we have our next keyword, we have drive. So drive is a little bit of, I would say it's a little confusing in a way. So I'll try my best to go as slow as I can and try my best to explain it as best as possible. And of course, if anybody has any questions, drop them down below in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer them in the comments and stuff like that. But we have the keyword drive. So followers with drive have rush and single drive. Alright, so we have single drive. So followers with single drive have a strike ability. So strike, you perform a drive check once. So going over the information we already have now, so followers with drive have the rush, so they're able to trigger the single drive ability as they're already played. Alright, so then we have drive check. So to perform drive check, you flip up the top card of your deck. If a trigger card is flipped up and your deck is a Cardfight Vanguard deck, you can activate the trigger ability of the flipped card. If the trigger ability is successfully activated, you put the flip card into your cemetery, and if the trigger ability failed to activate or flipped card isn't a trigger card, you put the flip card to the bottom of your deck. So essentially, followers with drive have the rush and single drive, which allows you to do the drive check, and you're able to look at the top card of your deck. If it's one of the drive check trigger cards that we were just talking about, then we're able to activate it and then it goes straight to the cemetery. And if it's not a trigger card, or if the trigger is able to fail due to other effects or anything like that, you put that card right to the bottom of your deck. Alrighty, next up we have twin drive. So followers with twin drive have the strike ability to perform drive check twice. Alright, so being able to do 2 drive checks is pretty nice, but then we have the on drive effect. So on drive is effects that activate when a follower is given drive. Alright soldiers, so a little summary of everything we've learned here so far. So followers with drive have the rush and single drive, and you're able to do drive check once as long as you have the single drive, and then it will specify if you're able to have the twin drive to be able to do drive check twice. We know that drive check is going to be flipping the top card of our deck and putting it into the cemetery if it's a trigger card that was able to activate. And if it didn't activate or wasn't a trigger card, it goes right to the bottom. And then the on drive is going to be the way you essentially evolve your followers. Just kind of like a good comparison to get everyone on the same page is how the on race ability worked for the Uma Musume set. Alright, so we have the keywords ride. So followers with ride can be given drive by paying the cost and putting a drive point card from your evolved deck under the follower. Followers with drive have single drive and rush, and you may use an evolution point to pay 1 play point for the ride cost. Followers with drive can't get another drive. So another good example, so this is race. When you race a follower, you feed them a carrot, you're able to do, whatever on evolve or racing effect that that follower needs to do. But in Vanguard, you're going to be using the ride mechanic. So using it to ride a follower, and then you're able to drive it, and then you know what happens when a follower gets drive, has the single drive and then rush. Alright, so we are going to have starter amulets in this set as well, and starter amulets in the Vanguard deck. So you must have at least 1 copy of a starter amulet in your card deck. You may only have 1 type of the starter amulet in your deck, and it must be placed face down on your field before the game begins, and then you turn it face up at the start of the game. Alright, and the starter amulet is really supposed to emulate the grade 0 that's in Vanguard. I've only played Vanguard a handful of times, so you know, have some mercy on me on some of the effects and the terminology for Vanguard here. But the starter amulet is a good emulation for how they have a grade 0 in Vanguard. Alright, so to most likely save time, I'm probably going to reuse these things. So these are going to be in between each and every video, so thank you so much for watching. We're going to go ahead and get into the reveals now, so hope you all enjoy the reveals. Alright, so the first card we're looking at is Intertwining Power. So it's a 3-cost spell. You can choose one of the following, and if you have at least 3 face-up drive points in your evolved deck, you can choose up to 3 instead. You can 1, select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 4 damage, 2, select a follower in your cemetery and add it to your hand, or 3, give your leader +4 defense. So a very different turnover from our past crossover sets where our neutral cards are really our big boss monsters. This is just kind of a spell card that can really drive you forward. And it seems like if you're playing the Vanguard deck, of course, if you have those 3 drive points, you're able to do all 3 abilities, which isn't bad for 3 play points. And then again, for the last neutral card, we have Intertwining Power, which is going to be the same card, but with different art. So it looks like they're going to be putting the same classes, or they're going to generate the clans and what they're associated with. So it looks like we have the OTT, and then we have the Aqua Force with the Pale Moon on one of the cards, and then we have the Kagero, Sword Paladin, and then Shadow Paladin on the other cards. Alrighty, and just like that, that was all of the neutral cards that's going to be coming out in the crossover set. And just for the sake of the video being, you know, not just like 5 minutes or anything, I didn't want to make it short for neutrals. I'm going to be including the starter deck stuff here, so if you're interested in looking at the Apocalyptic Fire and the Sanctuary Knight Brigade, which we're going to start with, by the way, because we are long overdue for our Swordcraft review here. So let's go ahead and transition into that. Alright, so transitioning into the Sanctuary Knight Brigade card list. So this is the entire list of the cards that you're going to be getting, with the amount of copies you will be getting in the starter deck. So this is just a review. We're going to go over each individual card so you'll know what it does. You'll have a big look at it and everything. We'll do it how we usually do on the channel, but I wanted to go ahead and show you guys how many copies you will be getting and stuff like that for the starter deck. Alright, so looking at the Sanctuary Knight Brigade card, so I want to give a disclaimer before we get into our first card. So we now, this video is going to serve purpose for the starter decks. So if you are here and are new to Shadowverse Evolve, you can please stay on this video. I'm not going to use the advanced terminology and stuff that I've done with the other reveals. I'm definitely going to try and go for a more beginner-friendly terms of terminology. So, you know, look out for that. And if I go too fast, let me know in the comments below, and I'll do better for the next starter deck or the next time we have a crossover set in case you're a new player coming in. But I'm hoping everyone will be able to have the same universal language here when I'm saying Twin Drive, you know, Storm, and I'll definitely break down that stuff just for the new Shadowverse Evolve players clicking on the video. Alright, so the first card we're looking at is Alfred Early, so it's a 4-cost 3/3. You can evolve him for 2 play points into a King of Knights Alfred. He has Storm and Twin Drive, so he's able to swing in the same turn and he can drive check twice. Alright, so naturally Sword likes cards that are able to be played onto the field and swing the same turn. So luckily for Alfred, he's able to have that Storm ability to swing into the leader, and then also having the Twin Drive to being able to check the top 2 to hit those drive triggers will be very helpful. Alright, and then we have King of Knights Alfred, so he turns into a 4/4 when he's evolved. He still has Storm and Twin Drive, but on evolve you search your deck for a Royal Paladin follower that costs 3 play points or less and put it onto your field. If there are at least 15 Royal Paladin cards in your cemetery, give this follower +1/+1. Alright, so you're really going to want to evolve Alfred as soon as he's played, just so you're able to get this big effect on this on evolve. So not only does he turn into a 5/5 as long as there's 15 Royal Paladin cards in your cemetery, which the Royal Paladin's deck is able to really siphon through their deck and put cards into their cemetery very fast, because they're flooding the field with like small bodies. But on top of that, you can go ahead and get a Royal Paladin from your deck that costs 3 or less and then put it into play. And typically one of the 3 drops can be Blaster Blade, and he's a 3-cost 3/3, and you can evolve him for 1 and he has single drive. But when he comes into play, if this follower was put onto the field with an effect, you can evolve him. Alright, so luckily that we looked at King of Knights Alfred, that we're able to play this Blaster Blade from our deck to immediately evolve it. And the cool thing about these evolve cards is that they're able to swing the very same turn that they're played once they're evolved. And a note for new players that you are only able to evolve 1 follower per turn, but do remember that this Blaster Blade fanfare is able to get past that gameplay restriction. So looking at the Blaster Blade evolve, so he turns into a 4/4 and he still has single drive, but on evolve you select the enemy follower in the field and deal it X damage. X equals 2 times the number of Royal Paladin followers on your field. Alright, so hoping everybody's able to do basic math here, and with the Alfred effect, when we evolve Alfred and we get the Blaster Blade and the Blaster Blade's able to evolve, we'll have 2 Royal Paladins on the field from that effect, and we're able to deal 4 damage to a follower. And a note for new players that will be building the Vanguard decks, you do have to pay attention to the fact that it does say Royal Paladin followers, so make sure you're looking at the special trait at the bottom of the card to make sure that you have X amount of Royal Paladin followers. Alright, and for new Shadowverse Evolve players, do remind yourself that when you do have an Evolve follower, you can swing into engaged enemy followers. Alrighty, next up we have Wingle, so it's a 1-cost 2/2. You can activate by using 3 play points to engage this card. You can select a Blaster Blade in your cemetery and put it onto your field. Alright soldiers, so if you are new, this is a 1-cost card that you can just play out, and then at any point in time you can spend those 3 play points to engage this card, and then you can put the Blaster Blade from the cemetery onto the field, which the Blaster Blade's fanfare effect is going to go off by, you know, since this card was played from an effect, you can go ahead and evolve him. So you're probably going to need a full playset of the Blaster Blade Evos if you're going to be using cards like Blaster Blade, Alfred, and Wingle. Alright, and next up we have Knight of Conviction Boar, so he's a 3-cost 3/3. You can ride him for 1, and he has a sail, but on drive you give this follower a +2/+2. Alright soldiers, so with this ability, once you ride this follower and give this follower drive rate, this follower does have rush, and then a sail. So the cool thing about a sail is you're able to swing into followers that are unengaged or reserved, and the engaged position is when they're in the horizontal side, so they're sideways, and then the reserved is when they are vertical and when they're upright. So followers that are vertical and reserved can't be swung into, but with this cool ability of sail, you're able to do that. And since you have ridden this card for 1, you're able to go ahead and have rush and a sail, and then with the on drive ability, this can turn into a 5/5. But I think this is some solid removal for any veterans watching this video. I think having a 5/5 on the field while using at least 1 evolution point on turn 3 is pretty good. Alrighty, next up we have Flash Shield Isolette. So she's a 1-cost quick spell. You can choose one of the following. You can either 1, select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage, or 2, discard a Royal Paladin card, and then you can select an enemy follower on the field and then deal it 3 damage, give your leader +2 defense. Alright, so new players, listen up. Alright, so the cool thing about spell cards is that they're only able to be used on your turn naturally, but what the cool thing about Quick is you're actually able to use them on your opponent's turn. And the cool thing about Quicks is that they're in response to an opponent's attack, or in response to your opponent ending their turn. So the amazing thing about Flash Shield here is that you're able to, in response, either deal 2 damage to an enemy follower on the field, or if you're rocking the Royal Paladin deck, or if you have an extra Royal Paladin and you're running the Vanguard deck, you can discard a Royal Paladin card and then deal 3 damage to a follower and then heal yourself for 2. Alrighty, next up we have Knight of Silence Gallatin. So it's a 5-cost 5/4. You can ride him for 1, but on drive you give this follower +1/+1 and then deal 3 damage to each enemy leader. But when he comes into play, you select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage. Alright, so we're lucky that this follower doesn't have Storm, so if you manage to play this card out for 5, naturally this card is just going to go off and then select the enemy follower on the field and then deal it 5 damage. Very helpful, but when you do ride this follower, you can turn it into a 6/5 and then deal 3 damage to the enemy leader, and then your opponent's going to have a hard time removing this card. Alrighty, next up we have Little Sage Maron. So she's a 3-cost 3/4. She has Ward, but when she comes into play, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Royal Paladin card from among them and add it to your hand. Put the remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. Alright, so the one thing that we really want to do on turns 3 and up is try to keep some tempo, or try to replace the cards that we're playing out our hand, or we're trying to at least change the game state in some sort of way. Alright, so it's not that bad to play Little Sage Maron on turn 3, just so you're able to look at the top 5, get any Royal Paladin card that you need, and then have this Ward skill, which you're able to engage her, and then the enemy followers have to attack into her before they can attack into your leader. Alrighty, next up we have Lake Maiden Lien. So she's a 2-cost 2/3, and she has Ward, but when she comes into play, you discard a Royal Paladin card, then you select a Royal Paladin follower in your cemetery and add it to your hand. Alright, and some effects that we're going to be looking at the top 2 and top 3, there are some instances where we're going up against a deck that's going to put cards from our deck right into our cemetery, or if there's a situation where I wish I had this Royal Paladin back into my hand, there's cards like these. So not only does this card have Ward, like we just saw on the little mare in there, so she's able to be engaged and the enemy followers have to swing into her first before they swing into your leader, but you're also able to get rid of a card and then add another card back into your hand. Alright, next up we have Knights of Rose Morgana. So it's a 2-cost 2/2. You can ride it for 1, but on drive you select up to 1 enemy follower on the field and then deal it 2 damage and then give this follower +1/+1. This follower also has a strike ability, so when it swings, you can discard a Royal Paladin card and then give this follower +1/+1. Alright, so this follower doesn't have Storm and or Rush, so it's not able to do any of the strike ability or on drive unless you ride it. So if you spend a total of 3 play points, or spending 2 and then 1 evolution point, you can do this on a drive effect to select the enemy follower and then deal it 2 damage, while also giving this follower +1/+1 and turning into a 3/3. And then with the strike ability, if you also have another Royal Paladin card into your hand, you can turn this follower into a 4/4 as soon as it swings. Alright, and the last card we're looking at is Stardust Trumpeter. So it's a 2-cost amulet, and it's a starter amulet. You can activate to engage this card and put this card into its owner's cemetery. Then you select a Vanguard follower on your field and you give it +1/+1. Alright, so if you're rocking the Vanguard deck, which is the starter amulet you will be starting on, so this is your grade 0. So at the start of your game, you have this card on your field face down, and as soon as you start your game, you know, your opponent, both you and your opponent say Shadowverse Showdown, you flip this over, and this is revealed that you are playing the Royal Paladin's amulet, with your starter amulet being the Stardust Trumpeter. And this is very helpful for the Vanguard decks, especially since this can choose any Vanguard follower and give them +1/+1. So if you're rocking any different sort of like Royal Paladin mixture with a Shadow Paladin, you know, anything like that, Kagero, you could just give any follower +1/+1, especially for those big Storm followers you might be playing later on in the game. And alright, soldiers, that was it for the Sanctuary Knight Brigade starter deck cards. Now we're going to transition over into the Apocalyptic Fire. Alright, so these are all the cards that are going to be coming out in the Apocalyptic Fire starter deck. So if you're looking towards getting the Dragoncraft starter deck Apocalyptic Fire, these are all the cards that you're going to be getting in this crossover starter deck. Alright, so I know you soldiers are excited to talk about the Apocalyptic Fire deck, or hear about it, but we do have some updates about an errata that will be in the crossover starter deck, so no one is confused. Alright, so the card Draonic Overlord got an errata here, so there is an incorrect text on the English text, so it naturally says deal at 5 damage, and if Overflow is active for you, give this follower once per turn. When this follower deals combat damage, refresh it. The correct version is deal at 5 damage, and if Overflow is active for you for the rest of this turn, this follower has once per turn when this follower deals combat damage to refresh it. And the reasoning behind that is that there was a mistake in the translation of this card's ability, where the original text omitted the phrase of for the rest of this turn, which made it unclear that the granted effect was only for this turn. And I think the good reasoning why they had to really clean this up, because if this really did proc on your opponent's turn, that would be very annoying, because imagine you only had 2 small followers, but you had enough to take care of this Draonic Overlord. So imagine you swing with your 2/2 and then you have a 5/3 that's refreshed, and now you can't swing into it because it had that ability of, since on once per turn it just refreshes itself. So now it's only for the duration of that player's turn, and it's able to refresh, and then if it wants to swing again, it can, but it won't get that refresh again on the enemy's turn. But yeah, getting back into the Apocalyptic Fire starter deck, that was the last little errata update outside of the Vortex Dragon for Kagero Dragon. But that's not for the starter deck. That was the only errata they needed to fix for the starter deck. And if you're going to be rocking the Apocalyptic Fire starter deck, there should be no other changes for it. Alright, so looking at Draonic Overlord, so it's a 4-cost 4/4, you can evolve it for 1, and it has Twin Drive, so it drive checks twice. And while Overflow is active for you, and there is another Kagero follower on your field, this follower has Storm. And alright, new soldiers, I see you are now seeing a new keyword skill, which you are scratching your head to. So Overflow is active when you have 7 or more play points. So the thing about Dragoncraft is they really ramp really fast. So they're able to get to 7 play points very early in the game, and they're in Overflow. But every deck can get into Overflow. So when you have 7 more play points, this follower has Storm as long as you have another Kagero follower. So you do have to remember that it has to be another Kagero follower on the field. But the coolest thing about Overflow is that you're able to play this follower for 4 and then have an extra 3 play points, and then you can use one of those play points to evolve Draonic Overlord. And what Draonic Overlord turns into is this 5/5 with Twin Drive, so it still has the drive check twice. But while this Overflow is active for you and there's another Kagero follower on your field, this follower has Storm. But on evolve, you select the enemy follower on the field and then deal at 5 damage. And while Overflow is active for you, this follower has during your turn, whenever this follower deals combat damage, refresh it, and you perform this ability only once per turn. Alright, so a reminder, this is the exact errata card that we were just talking about. So mind you that this follower does have Storm if you have another Kagero follower on the field, but naturally if you don't have another Kagero follower on the field, this follower does have Rush and the Twin Drive, so you're able to swing at an engaged follower and then drive check twice. Well, also the on-evolve ability happening while you evolve this follower, just dealing 5 damage to another follower, is good too. But we do need to make sure we remember that errata ability with the Overflow being active on this evolve card. Alrighty, next up we have Dragon Monk Goku. So he's a 6 cost 5/5. He has Ward, but you can activate to engage this card and then banish 4 Kagura cards in your cemetery. Then you can deal 4 damage to each enemy leader and enemy follower on the field. Alright, so another thing, soldiers, that we like on this channel outside of 2-for-1 specials in cards is board wipes. We absolutely love it when our opponent's playing low to the ground cards and we're able to just take care of everything with the ease of like 6 play points. And on top of this card also having Ward, so it's also doing its ability to the max. So we're able to play this card, banish those 4 Kagero cards and engage it, and then deal 4 damage to the enemy leader with all the enemy followers on the field. And then Ward is already activated since this follower is engaged. Alright, next up we have Dragon Knight Aleph. So he's a 3 cost 3/3. You can evolve him for 1 into an embodiment of Victory Aleph. So when he comes into play Fanfare, if there's an embodiment of Armor Bahar and an embodiment of Spear Tahar in your cemetery, you can evolve this follower into an embodiment of Victory Aleph. Alright, so the thing that I'm noticing about these starter cards is that there's going to be a card that's going to be able to cheat the evolve system here. So naturally, we're only able to evolve once through just spending the 1 play point and then changing the card into whatever the evolve form is, or whatever the evolve cost is going to transform it into. But with these fanfare effects that are just doing it through natural skills, we're able to get past the only evolve once per turn things. So if you want to evolve once per turn on another card and then play a card like Dragon Knight Aleph, since we're going to be an overflow a lot in the Dragoncraft class, or, you know, just recognizing what Dragoncraft does, we're going to be in overflow like pretty easily, or overflows where we're going to be doing the most of things. So having the embodiment of armor and the embodiment of spear in your cemetery is going to get past that evolve cost. Alrighty, next up we have Embodiment of Victory Aleph. So he turns into a 4/4 and then he has Twin Drive. So on evolve, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put a Kagura follower with a different name than Dragon Knight Aleph from among them into your EX area. Then you put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. For the rest of this turn, it costs 3 less to play. Alright, so evolving into this card is going to let you look at the top 3 to get any Kagura follower to put into the EX area, just as long as it's not the Dragon Knight Aleph. And then it's going to cost 3 less, so naturally you want to choose a card that you're going to be playing for free. Alrighty, next up we have Berserk Dragon. So it's a 3 cost 3/3. You can ride it for 1, but on drive you select up to 1 enemy follower on the field, deal it 3 damage, and give this follower +1/+1. But when it comes into play, you discard a Kagura card, and then you can select the enemy follower on the field and then deal it 2 damage. So a total of 5 damage to an enemy follower, as long as you're able to spend a total of 4 play points, or using 3 and then 1 evolution point to go ahead and ride this follower to make it a 4/4. So if you want to swing into 3 followers or take care of multiple followers in 1 turn, you're dealing a total of 9 damage to something. Alright, next up we have Wyvern Guard Bari. So it's a 1 cost quick spell. So quick, you can choose one of the following. You can either 1, select the enemy follower in the field and then deal it 2 damage, or 2, discard a Kagura card and then select the enemy follower in the field and then deal it 3 damage and 1 to its leader. So the cool thing about Kagero is that their game line is going to be burning their opponent. So they're going to be using fire and just, you know, spitting at the opponent with, you know, maybe 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage if you need to, and then swinging at them with big followers later on in the game. But with these quick spells being able to respond into opponent's attack, you can take care of those small followers. Or if there's a bigger follower that you're really scared of, you can go ahead and discard a Kagero card, take care of that follower potentially, and then also pinging them for 1 so you can set up for the kill the very next turn. Alright, so forgive me if I butcher this name, but we have Dragon Knight Nahalem. So it's a 2 cost 2/2. You can ride him for 1, but on drive you select up to 1 enemy follower in the field, deal it 2 damage, and then give this follower +1/+1. But it does have a strike ability, so when it swings, you can deal 1 damage to each enemy leader. Alright, so these small cards with these big abilities, so for a total of 3 play points or 2 and then 1 evolution point, you can select the 1 enemy follower, deal it 2 damage. Since you're in the early game, you might be able to hit a follower, and then being able to swing with Dragon Knight as a 3/3 will be helpful too. But if this follower is able to take care of a follower and then stay reserved, in that very next turn you can potentially do at least like a total of 4 damage from 1 follower, that's really good. Alright, and then we have the Embodiment of Armor Bahar. So he's a 3 cost 3/4. He has Ward, when he comes into play you draw a card. Alright, so this is one of the cards that you need to make the Aleph free in the cemetery. So this card just spending 3 and then having Ward while also drawing a card does seem a little lackluster, but you're able to play 3, have some really good solid defense on turn 3, while also replacing card that you're playing, and then have a nice solid Ward. Alrighty, next up we have Chain Attack Sutherland. So it's a 3 cost 2/2. When it comes into play, you select a Vanguard follower on your field and give it +3 attack. But you can also activate to engage this card, and you put this card into its owner's cemetery. You can select the enemy follower on the field and deal it X damage. X equals this card's attack. Alright, the cool thing about this card ability is that it has a multi-choice and range of things. So if you have a follower that has Rush that's able to swing into those engaged followers, you can give it that extra 3 attack. Or if you want to give an extra 3 attack to a Storm follower to swing into an enemy leader for more damage, that's helpful too. But if you're playing on the back end and you really need to get something off the field and remove something that has 5 defense, you can give it to this follower, and then you can engage them to go ahead and deal 5 damage to something. Alrighty, next up we have follower Rias, so she's a 1-cost 1/1. You can ride her for 2, but on drive you give this follower +1/+1. You search your deck for a card, give follower, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Alright, so outside of the starter amulets, there's nothing that's really going to be happening too much on turn 1. If your opponent has the removal on turn 1, you know, it feels bad that follower Rias got removed. But if you get back into your turn, you're able to ride her for 1. She turns into a 2/2, which you can then swing into the enemy leader since she was already on the field last turn. And she's able to get any Kagero follower from your deck to add to your hand. Alright, so pardon me, pardon my French, I think the UX is kind of like a French thing, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's Lizard Runner Undo. So it's a 2-cost amulet, and it's a starter amulet. You can activate to engage this card and put this card into its owner's cemetery. You can select a Vanguard follower on your field and give it +1/+1. Alright, so not bad in terms of a Vanguard starter amulet. So, like I said, starter amulets are going to be the cards that are face down on the field, and then as soon as you start your game, Shadowverse Showdown, you flip it over, and this card, at any point in time, you can just bury this card to select a Vanguard follower in the field and give it +1/+1. You just have to make sure you have a solid target to select a Vanguard follower. And alright soldiers, that was it for all of the reveals for the crossover starter Vanguard set. So, I do want to give a reminder before we peace out of here though. Alright, so soldiers, remember, when you get the crossover starter set card fight Vanguard starter decks, you're each going to get the 13 exclusive starter cards, such as Blaster Blade, which will be for the Sanctuary Knight Brigade, and the Draonic Overlord, which will be for Apocalyptic Fire. But just do remember that when you do get a starter deck, you do get the bonus card pack. So each crossover starter deck contains an exclusive pack that's going to be featuring 3 alternate rarity variants of the 12 exclusive starter deck cards. So mind you that if you do pull a legendary card, they are going to be the SLs, so the rainbow cards that you're going to see at the bottom here. And I'm pretty sure what they're going to be doing for the starter deck cards. I'm not 100% sure since I don't have them in front of me and in my hands. But if you already do, you know, please drop a comment below so we can all know the same information, so we all know what we're picking up when we're spending our money. But we should have the legendary cards being the rainbow card SL cards that you see here. And then the regular gold and belows will be just like regular foils. That's how I usually see them working with it. But if they're all going to be rainbow rarity like they were in the Idolmaster crossover set, then, you know, that would be cool too. But, you know, I'm not sure 100% since I don't have those cards in front of me. And the last thing that we are going to have the new alternative artwork for the leaders here, but they're not really like super alternative because most people are going to look forward to the leaders that are going to be coming out in the regular set, which I'm hoping everybody has good rarities pulling them. But alright soldiers, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. That is everything in terms of the reveals. Look forward to the next couple videos where I'm going to be talking about all the things that are happening in the conference and everything that's happening for Shadowverse Evolve. A nice little update on what we need for Shadowverse Evolve. And then in the future, we're going to be doing the breakdowns for every deck. But alright soldiers, make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do. What I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do.